Hello again, my name's Catherine and I'm one of the admins of Galaxy Australia. And we're going to go through a tutorial on Galaxy tool management with Ephemeris. So we'll look at how to install, update and maintain Galaxy tools, and we'll actually install some tools onto Galaxy. This tutorial introduces Ephemeris, which is a small Python library and set of scripts for managing Galaxy plugins, tools, index data, and workflows. Its aim is to help automate manual tasks that admins would be performing on Galaxy. So as a background scenario, you might be an administrator of a Galaxy server and someone has approached you with a request to run a specific Galaxy workflow. In order to enable the workflow, you need to identify the tools that are required for the workflow and install the tools and their dependencies on Galaxy. And so the first thing we'll do, we need to have Ephemeris installed. Normally, you wouldn't be running Ephemeris from the same machine that's running Galaxy, but during training courses, we normally install it on the same virtual machine used for the Galaxy server. So, virtualenv will be installed if this is a training machine. And then we follow these steps to create the virtual environment. Creating it in our home directories and activate the virtual environment. And then pip install Ephemeris. And I've typed this out, but feel free to copy and paste the block here. And so we're installing all of the requirements and you can see that Ephemeris 0.10.6 has been installed. It's a common request to install tools to run particular workflows. And there's a command in Ephemeris to do this, workflow to tools. We can extract a list of tools from a Galaxy workflow document, and then we can also install those tools using Ephemeris. The Galaxy workflow files are complex JSON documents, and so the process of mapping the tool IDs to toolshed repository and revision is not trivial. And the tool IDs you might have in a Galaxy workflow would look like this. You've got the toolshed and the owner, the name of the tool and the tool version. And what we need to get to in order to install them on Galaxy with shed tools is something like this with name, owner, a list of revisions that we need rather than the tool version, and toolshed URL. So we can practice this on a real workflow, which is a workflow from the Galaxy Training Network. So we'll start by downloading this workflow. Actually, I'll start by creating a folder to run these in. So I'll make a folder called Ephemeris and go into that folder so that this work is separate from the rest. And then copy this and paste to download the workflow file. So I'll have a look at this. So what we have are many steps in JSON format, and some of these steps correspond to Galaxy tools. Here we have FastQC, and the information that we want to get out of the workflow is the information about the toolshed repository. And so I'll press the Q button to get out of less. And so now using Ephemeris workflow to tools, we want to extract the tool list from this workflow. And the question here is, what does the command look like? So we'll look at the workflow to tools documentation. And so workflow to tools takes only 3 arguments. We have the input workflow, the output file, and optionally a label for the tool panel section. And if this isn't set, it is set to tools from workflows. So in order to extract the tool list, the command looks like this. We have workflow to tools. The W flag is our workflow file. The O flag is workflowtools.yaml, and the label is mapping. You could choose any label for this. So I'll copy this command and paste. And so now we can see what the workflowtools.yaml looks like. And so it's a number of tools in this format with name, owner, revisions, and tool shared URL. The section label for each one is mapping. And so now we're going to look at installing tools. And before we can do this, we need to have API keys. So to install a tool in Galaxy, you need to have the API key of an admin account. And so to get the API key, go to the user menu and then preferences and manage API key. And if there isn't one here, you might need to create a new key. Now with this key, copy it and save it somewhere in a file, or I'm actually going to save mine as a variable. So that I can call in it when I need to, and I can use this in commands. So we'll start off installing a single tool on Galaxy. So we need to use the Ephemeris shed tools command to install BWA owned by dev team into a section called mapping. And so we'll have a look at the documentation to see how to do that. So we're looking at the install subcommand. And which arguments we might need to install BWA. We need to install it into a section with a specific section label mapping. And the other arguments we need are the name and the owner. So the command looks like this. To install BWA, we need the G flag is your Galaxy URL, the URL of your Galaxy machine, and the API key, and then name, owner, and section label. And so I'll copy this and paste, and I'll replace your Galaxy with the Galaxy machine that I'm using, which is GAT-2Oz. and the API key that I've saved, or you can paste it in from somewhere and install BWA. Okay, this didn't work because I didn't call it API key. So now I'm installing BWA. If you've taken the tutorial on Singularity, this is fairly quick. It only takes about 15 seconds. And so BWA has been installed to the latest revision because we didn't specify which revision to install. So quite often we'll want to install more than one tool at a time, and we can do that using the workflow tools file that we just generated from the workflow. And for this step, I'm going to split my screen. I'm using Byobu. And there's a tip here for splitting the screen with Byobu. Shift F2 to create a horizontal split, which I'll do. And then I can use the Shift key and arrows to switch between them. But on the bottom screen, I'm going to run journalctl fu Galaxy so I can watch the logs in Galaxy while these tools are installed. So this time we're using shed tools to install a list of tools from a YAML file. And so going back to the documentation, the command line option for this is T or tools file. And the command looks similar to the previous one. Except that instead of name, owner, and section label, we're declaring the YAML file. And so instead of copying this, I'll use the up arrow to bring up my previous command. And instead of the name and owner, I have t workflow tools.yaml. And so now it's installing the 6 tools from the workflow. If your Galaxy is using Singularity containers, then this is a fairly fast process and should only take about 1.5 minutes. If your Galaxy is building Conda environments for each tool, then it might take a bit longer, maybe 7 or 8 minutes. And so we're already up to the third one, multi-QC, and we can see that Galaxy is working in the logs. Now we're on to the last one, which is BAM tools filter. And everything's installed. For me, it took 1 minute 17. It might vary between computers, and we have 6 installed repositories. Now we can go and look at these on Galaxy. So if you go to your Galaxy and refresh the page, in the tool panel mapping section, we have BWA that we installed and all of the tools from the workflow. And we can look at the workflow in Galaxy as well by importing the file from the URL. So for this, right click or control click onto this link and copy link address. This might be different on different browsers. And then in Galaxy, the workflow tab at the top, we select import and archived workflow URL. We can paste the URL that we've copied. So I'll open this. To look at this workflow, I need to select edit to look at it in the workflow editor. And I'll zoom out here. The text will be very small, but we'll be able to see the whole workflow. So we have 2 input steps and then all of the tools, Trim Galore, Fast QC, Multi QC, Bowtie 2, BAM Tools Filter, and a couple of SAM Tools Stats steps. And all of the tools are installed. We can also test tools with Ephemeris. So we can look at how BAM Tools filter is running by using the Ephemeris shed tools test command. And I'll open up the documentation for this subcommand. As with shed tools install, you can give it a list of tools in a YAML file, but in this case, we're only testing 1 tool. So in this case, we need the name and the owner, but we don't need to specify the section label this time. So to test BAM Tools filter, we have the G flag and the A flag and the name and the owner. Shed tools test. Mine is GAT2.oz. And my saved API key. Was it dev team? I'll just check. Yeah, it's dev team. So this looks right. And so Galaxy is actually running jobs with BAM Tools filter to check that the jobs run without error and that the output matches an expected output. And this one ran fairly quickly. And it has passed. Because it's running jobs, it creates a test history in Galaxy. So I'll zoom in again. And from history, we can select view all histories. And so I can see the test history that just ran. It uploaded a test input file and then ran BAM Tools filter to check that it was working. And the shed tools test command outputs a file with details of the tool tests called tool test output JSON. I'll just show you this file, but it's not terribly easy to read. Without formatting, but it contains details of the job, their start times, and the standard out and standard error of the tool. And so this is very useful if a tool has problems to see where it's gone wrong. And so tool testing gives you confidence that things are working correctly. And quite often the tools will be something that Galaxy admins don't really understand. So having an automated process to test is quite important. The tests are specified in the tool wrapper. And the JSON file that I showed you can be processed through Galaxy's planner mode to generate test reports in HTML and other formats to make it much easier to read. I always use this after running shed tools tests. And the last thing that we're going to do on Galaxy is obtain a tool list. We're going to use the Ephemeris get tool list command to obtain the full set of tools installed on usegalaxy.eu. I'll go to the documentation for this. And so get tool list takes a Galaxy URL and an API key, although that's not necessarily required for something like getting the list of tools from usegalaxy.eu. There's no need to provide an API key. And the output file and some options for including different things. So in this case, we're just using the G flag, which is in this time it's usegalaxy.eu, and the output file will be eu tool list.yaml. I'll copy this. And paste. And I'll actually get out of the other window. Can Control C to stop the log. And in my case, because I'm using a Mac, Control D to close the split. So now we have eu tool list.yaml, and have a look at the first few lines of this. Run head, just 20 lines or however many you like. So now we have a list of tools in the same format as the format that we generated from the workflow. And we could use this to install all of the tools from usegalaxy.eu on another instance. We won't install this on our own instances because there are far too many. We look at how long this file is. Counting the lines. Typo. Yep, so there are 12,000 lines in this file. I'm not sure how many tools that is, but it's very many. And it's probably a greater number in a few weeks' time when people are taking this tutorial. and we only get the toolshed tools through this process, not the local or built-in tools in Galaxy. And so there's servers which are part of the Use Galaxy Star network, Galaxy Main, Galaxy Europe, Galaxy Australia, and others use Ephemeris a lot to manage large tool sets. Galaxy Europe and Galaxy Australia have different automated processes for installing and updating tools using Ephemeris. And there is a collaborative approach underway at Galaxy Project to use Galaxy tools. And you can use Ansible to run Ephemeris. And there's an Ansible role in a sample playbook that might help automate some tasks. And the reason that we're not doing it here is that we want to show the hands-on commands. And these are things that you can do when Galaxy is already running, as opposed to the Ansible roles for setting up Galaxy. So there are some tips to reinstall environments if they're not working. It's not advised to install multiple tools simultaneously. And there is no method in Ephemeris for uninstalling tools, and it's an open source project that welcomes contributions. So if there's a key point here, it's not to manage your Galaxy tools manually, because Ephemeris provides a method of automating this. It's much easier to do things like install many tools at once, and it makes it much easier to keep a record of what you've done and why you've done it. And we welcome feedback. There's a feedback form at the end of this tutorial. Thanks very much for watching.